Hi everyone, and we are back talking Black masculinity and mental health. In the studio with us today is the Bearded Breadfruit, aka Dwayne. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself, Dwayne?
Yeah, where to start? So, if people follow me and if you notice me recently, I am probably most known by fitness on social media. But the road to podcasting probably just only happened in the last couple of months, really. So, my initial quote-unquote claim to fame would have been going on social media, maybe training with some gas bottles.
Interesting.
It really rose, I guess, to prominence in the pandemic. But the name Barefoot and everything, I really give that praise to my ex-coach called Northside. So I found in the journey that I took to my fitness journey on social media was kind of like unorthodox, I guess, because I decided to stop eating meat and go on to this venture of vegan bodybuilding and try to find my way through bodybuilding itself here in Barbados. So I entered into men's physique competitions locally, and that slowly grew, and I would have subsequently, after a few shows, won nationals here in Barbados. That would have been in 2022, just after COVID. But what I found is that while I was using fitness as an outlet to maybe get away from other things underlying, it also became very damaging, so to speak, to my mental health. Whereas I would find myself constantly in a state of overtraining, so to speak, and rather than using training as a tool to build my mental health, or like just I guess give it more of a like a strength base, so to speak. Words kind of eluding me at this stage, but it started to become this drug. And I use that word not loosely because drugs came in a part of my life, usually marijuana, but it became like this thing that I constantly needed to do to try to feel better. But seeking that out, and as a personal trainer, I would have been in contact with a lot of young males, and being in the gym space, I found that there's this ego that seems to enter the gym, but after you lift weights and stuff like that, it dissipates, or at least for a time, it's not as big as it used to be. And then men decide to share certain stories or share experiences. And in that, especially being a trainer, like there are often these times where you have to cross the line between being a physical trainer and being somewhat of a therapist, because people share things with you that they wouldn't normally share outside of the gym. And because of that, it kind of led people to open up to me in a certain way. And men especially would just share issues or experiences that they may be going through in life. And I said, you know what, maybe there's something that could be done here, or there's something more that is needed in the gym space. And it's something that men need, a safe space, so to speak. Because while the gym, for many of us, started out as that safe space, there were still layers to maybe peel back when it comes to what it means to be a man. And that is not just strength. That's not just how you appear physically. Even that is a very, that stoic type of man is a very defining characteristic for a man in society. Like, you need to look a certain way, you need to act a certain way, right? And the gym has been known for that for a long time. But over the years, beneath all that has been like mental health struggles. So I say all that to say, being on stage, lifting weights, being in the space of other men that also feel like they're broken in a sense, led me to create Barbell Conversations. Whereas I can use the space edifying guys in the way that the gym would, but in a different way to help speak on topics that we would speak about behind closed doors, so to speak.
And I think you you mentioned a lot, and I really appreciate you for sharing that. But I wanted to ask, you mentioned in terms of the gym being, this platform for, I guess, a level, some form of external gratification. At what point did you kind of realize that this external gratification ain't working anymore? You know what I mean?
That's a good question. I think for me, and any athlete that you may come across, the stage really takes a lot. And because starting on my journey, I never had a coach, so to speak. I never really had someone to say, well, you need to eat this or you need to eat that. Do this with your calories or do this with your body. I did have a coach that would maybe in the interim show me how to pose, for example, right? And for another show, there was a very close family member that also had a gym. Big ups to Fudge in Parishland. That's my cousin's dad. And these two kind of set the path or set the tone for stepping on the stage. But because I was going against the grain, like, I don't want to say that they don't want to help, but it seemed as though the help just went that far, right? And I'm going to tell you all back in a minute. Getting on the stage, everyone believed that you needed to eat meat or have a certain regime to be successful in this sport. And it wasn't about it. I wanted to go another road to show people that if you just stick to something else, you could also be successful, right? So, but in doing that, not having a coach to say, dial it back a bit or don't, not having a coach to say, this is what you should eat or not, you tend to take on the load of everything else along with life's challenges, right? It started to be heavy on my mental going into 2, 3, 4 shows because it's taxing on the body, it's taxing on the diet, and in turn, it starts to take a toll on the mental. And I already, before then, was suffering with like anxiety, depression, so to speak, and the illicit drug use. So combining all that together, it wasn't a good equation for me to be on stage battling these things, but still trying to show people that it's possible to do something completely different than what's normal. So I lost a few jobs in between, and everything started to take a very big decline for me. But then there was still no one to turn to. There was no one to talk to. There was no one to like say or express these feelings to, because it was just, you get on the stage, you do it, and that's it, right? At least that's how it felt. So it was after my first nationals, I'd lost like 2 jobs in 2 months, and not knowing where money was coming from, not knowing how to set myself up for success now. After placing second in the second show that I did, if you follow the story on social media, it became, I don't really know what to do anymore. And the overtraining started, the depressive cycle started again, the drug use started. It was just like a very cruel mix of all those things, like a very toxic mix. And I realized that I was putting myself in spaces that I didn't necessarily need to be in. I'm putting myself back in spaces I didn't necessarily need to be in anymore. And it just created like this spiral. So after being like that and seeing guys seeing things maybe along the lines of just everyday things that were happening in their life, I was always self-aware to some degree, but being self-aware and knowing what to do is two different things. But then when you hear people talk about stories and you find yourself even in a separate space, but still sharing the same type of experiences, I feel like there's something more that needs to be done. And I guess that is kind of where it started. Nothing happened after the first national show, but I think being in that depressive state again started to set things in motion. Even though nothing physically was happening, it started to like turn some gears for me. Like, I really can't be doing this to myself again. But I guess if we get deeper into, why I did those things, then it will all like tie in. I don't want to keep you here too long.
No, I mean, feel free. I think what you said, straight to the point, and I was kind of navigating, as you mentioned all of these things. Would you say, in your experience throughout this journey, was there like any pressure as a Black man, for example, whether it be emotional, the whole thing about emotional resilience, physical strength, etc. Did that add to it, or in your situation, no?
Oh, for sure. Okay, so here's a little, I guess, a brief backstory. I don't want to get too eerie or too gruesome, but there was a time in life that before doing all these things, I was very, as I said, battling with low self-esteem, depression, anxiety. Obviously then, well, when I was younger, mental health wasn't something that was praised, and you don't know that you're dealing with it because you never really read anything. And when you hear depression, you're thinking about all these other like crazy, I don't want to say crazy, but these disorders that need to be treated. And I guess in your mind, you're saying to yourself, well, I don't think I'm sick, so I don't need to be treated, so maybe it's nothing that's wrong. In secondary school, going into tertiary education, I wasn't typically the outgoing type person that I was. So I found myself maybe keeping to myself a lot. But that would often result in seeking out people that had the same type of feeling that I had. I grew up in a family with a lot of females. So talking about your feelings, the men often came across as you being a wuss or you being soft, right? So online, there's like so many people available, and there were all these chat rooms and stuff that you can go and you could just talk to people. So I find myself talking to these people from all over the world, and we kind of shared similar experiences. And that led to self-harm. And self-harm slowly turned into finding myself as I got older in spaces where I needed a different type of release, right? So I found marijuana while I was at work, I think. The job that I had at icn. I remember one person saying vividly to me that you need something to de-stress. And the outlet could look like alcohol, it could look like weed, and for some reason weed stuck. Then I will find myself in spaces where there's this block culture.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you can see that these are broken men in many of these spaces, men in these spaces won't talk about mental health and depression and anxiety. But the same, I think the same, should I say, characteristics that I found in myself, or at least what it appeared to be to me, the things I was dealing with, I could see in these guys, even though they never said it out loud. It's like, it seems like he may be battling with something. And I don't want to stand here and say, well, I'm a psychic or I am a therapist, but these things seem to have a pattern. Like, you do these things and then, right? Or these things happen in life, whatever the case may be, and then you resort to this. Something happened in life and all of a sudden now you're here on the block. I've seen so many stories of guys firsthand where they don't typically grow up in this culture. But due to circumstance, due to how they've tried to find advice or solace in men who may not be a father or a father figure, we turn to these guys who may be older, who may not be older, but may be more experienced in this field, and you turn to them for support, for advice. And then, despite how disturbing the advice may be, or how upsetting to other people looking on it may seem, at some point, the block becomes a safe space. But it isn't really, because you can't really share the emotive or the emotional feelings that you may be feeling inside.
And I want to probe you a bit. Of your experience, what do you think that is?
I still think there is stigma attached to it. Mm-hmm. I still think it's something that men don't typically want to deal with. I still think that idea of the stoic man, the idea of like this strong man, men shouldn't cry, men shouldn't. I still think as much as mental health is very prominent in today's society, it's still something that men battle with because they don't want to come across as feeling weak, right? And cut to the gym. Mm-hmm. I can't, but the stronger I get, the less of a weakling I started to feel like,
Or at least you're perceived.
Or at least I perceive, right? But that's the thing, like, I thought that getting on stage or getting in front of the camera or lifting these weights, I thought that erased how I felt. You get me?
Get you.
I felt that if I feel this way, and I can't talk to these guys about it, but then everybody else looking and see that, well, he's kind of strong, or he could lift a lot of weight, or I feel like that starts to erase the feelings I have inside. But then after losing the jobs, not performing well on stage, and certain other things that would have happened during that particular year, like, the feelings came back, but I was still strong. You know what I mean? I can still lift these weights, but I still feel this way inside. And it was years I thought that I like, for lack of better term, like dead issue. I felt like I got past this level. No, I shouldn't be feeling this way anymore. I don't find myself in certain spaces anymore. I shouldn't be feeling this way anymore. I don't typically, I tried not to be smoking as much when I was doing some shows. And it was like, why am I still feeling like something missing, I think 3 things happened for me. 2 of them would have involved drug use. Mm-hmm. And the other one was not so much. So this is what happened. The first instance was after I lost the jobs, I started to find, I didn't want to work again. I always wanted to work for myself. But I had an aunt, and like I talk about her like a lot, and she's been I mentioned her briefly in the first podcast, but her name is Joycelyn, and I was staying at her apartment. And before I left, and this is before the whole like losing jobs fully, because I was actually working for Flo at the time. But before I left her apartment, because I was renting there, I wasn't able to pay her rent, right? So we sat down, we had a heart to heart, talked about my self harming stuff, and a whole set that kind of like opened her eyes to what was really going on inside of my mind and emotionally. But it was just left there. It wasn't anything to be dealt with. It was just left there. But it kind of gave somebody, having the space to talk to somebody actually felt better, right? But it wasn't a man. It was another woman. But at least she gave me a listening ear to just say what I had to say. She kind of pushed for me to try to find another job, right? That's why she, for me, is so prominent at this stage. And she pushed for me to like try to continue some studies and go on. So I started that, but I still found myself going to mix up in, trying to have drugs. And again, I don't want to laud myself as like this drug lord, like full gangster and anything like that, right? So it's like, I just want to make that clear. I just try to find like an outlet for what I was dealing with at the time. But I found myself in a space and I always try to go back to smoking. Anyways, I found myself working for a restaurant. It's closed now. But I remember vividly that there was a time where I kind of had like these battling thoughts like, do I really want to be doing this? Do I really want to be in this space? And it just so happened that on this particular night, this guy was like, we should go to the bar. I was like, yeah, cool. Whatever. And we went to the bar and we drinking. And then before I know it, like realizing that he running the tab and then I running the tab and then he running the tab and somebody else running. And I was like, this is way beyond the budget that I was expecting to spare right now. But it was a good time. We drinking, we smoking, and cool. Like a normal day, really, because again, like I don't want to gas myself up, but smoking was literally like the outlet for me. Drinking was secondary. We left the bar that night, and he's driving on the influence. On the influence. I'm just like, we really shouldn't be doing this. But I'll never forget speeding and driving in the middle of the road, and I was just like, I think you could slow down. I said, nah, we gotta get home. This is my girl car. Gotta get back. Cool. Now, before, he presented himself as a little stoic too, like, you know what I mean? I got weed, I got money, be good, like car, we can take it back. And that just seems to be the notion for like almost every man I meet. Don't let us talk about these like underlying issues. Don't let me talk about stuff. Let me just deal with what's like face.
In front of us.
Right? Yeah. Still speeding, whatever. Took this corner. If you know where Daphne's used to be, and at the end up like Payne's Beer, right? And there's like a guard wall right by Esso gas station.
Yeah.
Took this corner. And again, I don't like to class on myself, or I wouldn't class on myself as being psychic. But on this particular night, I didn't say it, but there was this vision that if we turn here, we hit it. And we hit it on my side. So, turn the car on my Daphne's. Next thing I remember is that the car was just like up in the air. Land. Glass shattering. And this windshield on this side and the mirror denting. Looking back at it, it wasn't severe because the damage on my side, even though it was bad, it wasn't like terrible because I didn't get hurt, right? But in my head, it was like, this probably could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
There's a security guard at the hut, Daphne's, and he's running over, and he's like, you guys all right? You guys all right? That's crazy. And this Drake went over and said, we gotta leave here. There's my girl car. We gotta leave. Starting. Nothing happening. So in my mind, it's like, this is probably worse than it really looks. The guy passed and he's like, y'all not leaving here. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, dog, like, absolutely everything on your side of the car, like, damn, his wheel turn from being this way to being like horizontal. I was like, really? Door scraping, then. I was like, outside, don't look like how I feel. I feel okay if we get we looking at the car, just like, oh my God, what's going on? I started to see this guy who was presenting this stoic nature, and this is no knock to him, because in any circumstance, any scenario, like, you would feel the weight of that, because it's a scary situation to be in, especially if the car is not yours, and especially if you're driving on the influence, coupled with the fact that we got weed, you know?
Yeah.
And he stepped out of the car and said, oh my God, my girl kill me, blah, blah, blah. He starts crying. You know what I mean? Like, just shedding tears. I can't believe that this happened to me. And then my mind is like, where is the guy before? Everybody said, I mentioned crying, like, where is the guy before? Anyways, that situation got dealt with. We got home. And then I decided, let me try not to be drinking and driving. Then that situation occurred. Same restaurant scenario, and we left, and this guy decided that we're gonna pull up at a block. Now, this is a block that I don't decide that I don't, or I have never, like, ventured on. And even though I wasn't new to block culture, I wouldn't say that, like, I'm like this block guy. I remember being on a block one time, and one person said, like, you don't want to use a block, man, but I think like you could stay here for a bit, because you seem like you're blending with everybody, but so I guess you are. And I don't strike myself as being like a snitch or anything. So I feel like, that'd be cool. Like, after you just let me smoke and think, I get it, cool. And this guy decided that he can pull up at this block and he can get off and walk on. Cool. He walk under the block and we sitting down, we chilling, and I decide, you know what, out of respect, let me get out of the car and go on the block. Like, guys can't come and say that I just sit on here on the block and they're just looking suspicious. Even if I look suspicious, get out of the car. At least y'all can see me. Y'all know what it is. I ain't here at the threat. I'm very your guy. Very cool. Roll a split. Sit on the corner. Guys talking. Started like. And just in the matter of cup, like, this area hot. Like, everybody know this. In a matter of seconds, I hear someone offer like squatties. I'm like, squatties? Like, this is not what I signed up for. You know what I mean? And this guy comes in, run back to us. All of a sudden, there's this black dude coming, and there's this guy stepping up with these big guns. Like, yeah, I was like, when in my life has it ever been that I had to try to escape death, so to speak, from crashing a car or potentially getting shot? There's never been a time in my life that I have played out ever, right? So, it's like, you know what? I think no, again, to bring it full circle to answer your question, those 3 moments, like talking to my aunt, leaving, getting in the accident, being in a space that I didn't need to be. And then after that time, I was on a block another time where like police turned up and everything. I was like, my life was never charted in this way, where I had to find myself in these spaces. But I changed my life in a sense where I wanted to step out on my own and do this whole like fitness thing. And this is not that. You know what I mean? So it became a thing where, like I said, I was always self-aware, but being self-aware and knowing what to do or knowing how to like deal with this awareness is something totally different. So when those 3 incidents happened, it was just like, I feel like something got changed. I was in the gym, and I never really dealt with this father issue, so to speak. I think we're cool now, but not talking to him, leaving home and all sorts of stuff, had me in a state where I felt like I had no connection to him. And one of my friends in the gym came to me and said, maybe you should check out therapy. Mm-hmm. And I think those 3 moments, like, as separate as they were from each other, those pivotal moments for me were like the building block to maybe this is how you change. So maybe the smoking and trying to fit in, so to speak, even though I still battle with it from time to time, maybe trying to fit in that space isn't what you need right now. You know what I mean? Like, you tried it, you went drinking and smoking, there was accident. Or you going on a block that you didn't supposed to be on and police turn up. You know, this guy coming to you and saying, well, maybe this is something a little bit more that you should deal with and, you know, give it a try. And I guess what I want to say is this was the only thing that I hadn't tried. Or this is the only thing that, well, I did try it, but it wasn't really sitting with me. But maybe it's time to like look at it again from like another angle and not doing all the things that I knew weren't working, so to speak.
Thank you for sharing your story and sharing your story so willfully. You know, I can't imagine that it's something easy to reflect on. But yeah, truly thank you. How would you encourage more Black men, more Barbadian men to be comfortable with acknowledging, willing, and want to go to therapy to handle things that, you know, as you mentioned, on a deeper level?
I can't, and I wouldn't. I think there was a podcast that I did, the same podcast with Simon Pike, and we both agreed we aren't therapists, so I can't tell you to seek therapy, and I wouldn't tell any and everybody to seek therapy. But I think there needs to come a point. I think a part of being a man is kind of like taking accountability. I don't stand here to make it seem like I know everything or that I have everything under control, but understanding that or having the awareness that everything that you do creates either like a trickle effect for the future you or even just present you. And a lot of the things that a lot of men do now keeps, I guess, perpetuated in certain cycles in society. And if you understand that even if you aren't on the worst end of the stick, that you're still part of the cycle and the problem, acknowledging that you can have some accountability in your life and make a change at any point, I think that helps. Again, I can't tell you that you need therapy or that you should seek it out. But sometimes, I guess in my experience, trying another way, there's no harm that could be done in that. If you try something and it isn't working, what's that saying? Like, if you do something 1,000 times and you keep doing it all the time, and like, you don't see any result from that. Tupac said it in one of his songs, like, changes. And the only change that could really occur is the change that's happening within yourself. So you try that. And yeah, I think that's one step to being a better you or a better version of yourself as a man.
Yeah, I think, you know, you're even causing me to just be, you know, you're causing me to be lost of words. And, you know, just kind of just reflecting on your own personal story. And I guess probably doing some sort of reflection on my own, like,